You can't look at this bottle and not get a little bit horny. Neat Nation, what's up? Hope you guys are having a good Monday. If you're watching this on Monday, which many of you do when my videos premiere. Stoked to have you guys join me for this one. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad to have you along for the ride, for sure. Been doing a lot of Buffalo Trace stuff recently, and it felt good then to step into the world of Stagg Jr. Stagg Jr. is a mythical beast at this point. Not too easy to come by, but if you're a bourbon geek, you know about it, so we're going to talk about it. If you guys are looking for more content, just get down and subscribe to the Droopy Whiskey channel. That's this channel. Subscribe to it. Like the video, leave a comment, and you can now check out the Entry Proof Podcast. That's my podcast with Brian Bikey, entryproofpodcast.com. If you want to support both the channel and the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/entryproofpodcast. Going down to Starlight Distillery in very southern Indiana this Thursday to pick our first barrel for Patreon supporters, and for us, of course. Now let's talk about this bottle. Let's talk about what the dealio is with Stagg Jr. First, I actually think I need some bourbon here. Can't talk about it without tasting it, which we'll taste this one in just a second. I'm going to taste a little something else right now. You should hang out till the end of this video because not only will I be bottle popping this and giving you some tasting notes, but I'm also going to taste this up against one of my absolute favorite, more common barrel-proof bourbons, and that would be Elijah Craig Batch C920. So hang out to the end of this video for a little whiskey war. My first sips today are going to be Buffalo Trace because that's where Stagg Jr. is from. If we're going to talk about what the deal is with this, let's talk about where it comes from. That's Buffalo Trace Distillery. This is the same mash bill as this stuff. It's just like way proofed up, probably a little bit older. So this is the big brother of standard Buffalo Trace. And it's actually the little brother of this, the George T. Stagg. So let's get into some history here. George T. Stagg, that was the name of Buffalo Trace Distillery before Sazerac bought it and renamed it Buffalo Trace Distillery. It was the George T. Stagg Distillery. George T. Stagg owned it for quite some time. In 2002, Buffalo Trace launches their Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Those are their heavy hitters, their older super premium releases. And their oldest rye bourbon, so bourbon with rye in the mash bill, their oldest barrel-proof rye bourbon that they release is George T. Stagg. And actually going back to 2002, it was their only barrel strength, barrel proof release. They didn't have one other than that outside of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And of course, between 2002 and 2013, the popularity of Antique Collection and George T. Stagg grew substantially. I talked about that in my What's the Deal with Buffalo Trace video. It's worth a watch if you haven't checked it out already. You know what, I'll link it down below in the show notes. You can hit it when you're done with this one. So then in 2013, put this away, 2013, Buffalo Trace says, oh, okay, you know, like George T. Stagg's done well. Let's put something out there with a little bit more availability. Not quite as old, but we will release this Stagg Jr. barrel-proof Buffalo Trace product, and we'll make it a little bit more available. It's about 7 to 9 years old, which the George T. Stagg can be as much as like 15 years old, 16 years old. So not quite as much age on this one, but it's a heavy hitter for sure in terms of the proof. Like I haven't had one of these at less than 130 proof. This one's 130.2. So if you're a fan of the Buffalo Trace profile, but you're wanting something that's just got a lot more oomph, a lot more intensity, not nearly so diluted down, then Stagg Jr. is, you know, gonna have some appeal to you. This thing gets released twice per year. George T. Stagg gets released once per year. Stagg Jr., a little bit more broad distribution, and then there's generally a spring release and a fall release on this guy. The last batch that was released was fall 2020. That was batch 15. What I have in front of you today is batch 14. I mentioned that this is the same mash bill as Buffalo Trace. That's Buffalo Trace Distillery mash bill number 1. So it's the same stuff as George Cheese Stagg, same stuff as Eagle Rare. Not the same stuff as Blanton's though. That's different. Not the same stuff as Weller. Also different. Besides being, 7 to 9 year old barrel proof Buffalo Trace, that's got a lot going for it already. The other thing that Stagg Jr. has going for it is its MSRP, which is like $50 or $60. They're still, Sazerac and Company is still releasing this product with a super, super reasonable manufacturer suggested retail price. Now you almost never see it for $60. Pretty much never. Just because the demand on it has gone through the roof. But if you did see it for $60, you should probably buy that. You should definitely buy it. I'm going to say you should buy it. If you don't want to buy it anyway, and then send it to me, and I'll send you some cool swag. We'll call it a trade. Spoiler alert, this is one of my favorite bourbons. I think it's fantastic. And if I could get it for $60 all the time, I would drink it all the time. Bottom line is I can't. It's really hard to come by. So the fact that I'm going to bottle pop one tonight in this video, that's kind of a special thing. Like, this is a very special occasion whiskey for me. Sip a little bit tonight, save the rest for when I see people, that I like and want to share some bourbon with them. So that's the specs on this. We're talking about a high proof, barrel proof, Buffalo Trace, mash bill number 1, $60 MSRP. Now, the hype. Like the hype is pretty easy to understand, especially if you've watched my videos, what's the deal with Buffalo Trace and what's the deal with Blanton's. You get the hype around the Buffalo Trace distillery. Like, they've just crushed it so hard. Their releases have been so solid. Then you release barrel proof Buffalo Trace. Of course, it's going to the moon. Like, it's going full Bitcoin or GameStop, as the case may be, and it's out there. Like, good luck finding it. You can't be stopped. So it doesn't sit on shelves. It's very difficult to find. I was very fortunate and had a friend pick this up for me at a grocery store where he got it for $60. That was pretty awesome. The other one I had to trade for. The secret's out on Stagg Jr. Which it wasn't always that way. Like, if we go back and do a little bit of historical review, and if you actually read reviews from the very early batches of Stagg Jr., which came out in 2013, you know that the first batches weren't met with acclaim. It actually kind of sucked. That's the rumor. I didn't have super early batches, but those that did would tell you it was, I think, what was it? Breaking Bourbon called it a hot mess. Like, just fire and like big, bold, and just crazy. Like, too hot, too much oaky bitterness, not enough like refined, sweet, delicious, fruity, brown, sugary, maple syrupy Buffalo Trace flavors. That's since been remedied. Like, the most recent releases are very highly acclaimed, especially batch 12, which I happen to have and am not opening tonight. That's lauded as one of the better / best releases. And you can see now, because the appeal, the profile, the panache around Stagg Jr. has gone through the roof. So then have the secondary prices. I mentioned the retail price is only $60, but the secondary prices on your, batch 14 or batch 15 release is around 140 or 150. So we're talking 2.5 times MSRP. That's a pretty hefty markup, and it's not unusual to see then retail stores charging that, which again is understandable. You can watch my video, What's the Deal with Secondary Prices, or the secondary market, if you want to learn more about the inflating bourbon prices. Batch 12, the one that is regarded as being one of the better ones, or one of the best ones, is even fetching as much as $250 on the secondary market. So the fervor for Stagg Jr. is carrying over to people paying exorbitant prices, which just makes it harder for you to get, because if people have the chance to buy it and they don't want it, they'll buy it and they'll sell it and make some money. So it's just part of the difficult thing about the world we live in. Now, is it worth it? Well, I'm going to pop this in a minute and tell you if this particular batch is worth it, but generally I'd say yes. It's worth retail, let me be clear. It's definitely worth buying at 60 bucks. I already said that. If you can get it, do it. I would pay up to 100 for it because it's really, really good. And to me, it's a special occasion bourbon. I'm going to start in Him and Haw if it goes over 100. Is it worth $150? Like, I mean, it really just depends on what your occasion is, who you're drinking with, whether or not you've had it. If it's like one of your favorites, then that's the only way you can get it. I can't make that judgment call. I can say that there are some probably equally good bourbons for less, you know, between the $80 and $100 range. I will say it's hard to match this profile. So yeah, I never want to say something's worth 150 bucks. It's hard to do that, but if you've tried a particular batch and you're blown away by it and it's one of those you just got to have, $150 isn't the most you would pay on the secondary market for a product, but still a butt ton of money. You could play a couple really solid rounds of golf for that. Swing Nation. But maybe when we're trying to assess, is it worth it? The most helpful thing to do is see how it stacks up. So it's time now. First, we're going to taste this next to its younger brother, Buffalo Trace, and be like, okay, is it good? Is it twice as good as Buffalo Trace? Because it's twice as much MSRP. It's 3, 4, 5 times as much secondary. And then we're going to stack it up against very highly acclaimed batch of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch C920. So let's pop this thing. Amazing foil top on this, just super, super sexy. This is a hallowed moment. Soak it in. Very nice pop too. I would expect nothing less from Stagg Jr. All right. So Buffalo Trace, very easy flavor notes to describe. It's pretty light, floral, honeysuckle, honey itself actually. Peachy, so light fruits, very light florals, light delicate sweetness. Nothing particularly grainy about it though, which is important. While it's a youngish whiskey, it's not too young. It's reached a point of maturity that's like, oh yeah, that's a really solid bourbon. Lighter on the profile though. Very easy drinking. Perfect like introductory bourbon. Then we get to Stagg, which is noticeably darker. Not that color tells you too much, but it's telling me that this is it's got some barrel influence right away, and there's no water involved. Like they're barrel proof, it's uncut, unfiltered, basically straight from the barrel. And it's evident on the nose too. It hits you with more barrel char straight away. The honey goes to like deeper into maple syrup, brown sugar. You get some cherries, whereas here we're getting like peaches, apricots on the Buffalo Trace. Here we're getting cherries and maybe some plums. It smells amazing. It smells quite lovely. Now, Stagg Jr. is anything but subtle. That's the thing I'll say right away. Because if you're looking for the most refined bourbon, I spit a little bit there. Stagg Jr. is not it. While I think it's quite delicious, it's still bold and in your face, probably as much as it was on day one, but now it packs some sweetness and it's more balanced probably than the early editions of Stagg Jr. based on what I'm reading in reviews. Again, I haven't had those early ones. I feel like I can plumb the depths of this. The nose certainly carries over into the palate. Get some like red delicious apple, kind of a plummy pruniness, not too heavy. It's not like raisins, but it's definitely in the stone fruit family of like a dark cherry, plum, etc. Plenty of like vanilla custard. Yeah. It's got some viscosity on the mouthfeel. The heat kind of cuts through it, Like initially when it's in your mouth, it's like, okay, it's thick, it's oily. But then it's so hot when you swallow that oiliness kind of goes away. And you're left with a slight drying. Not bad. I mean, we're not talking about over oaked here, but it's just a finish that doesn't go super long. Very, very enjoyable on the palate. I want a little bit more length on the finish for some of those amazing flavors I was getting, but whatever. How does it stack up to Buffalo Trace? Yeah, I mean, it's like Buffalo Trace is a good everyday sipper, but this is just like, it is more than 2 times better in my opinion. It makes me want Buffalo Trace Distillery to wait until all Buffalo Trace barrels reach 7 to 9 years, and then I wish they would bottle them all at cask strength. That just sounds amazing to me. But granted, I'm not every bourbon drinker. I don't make up the entire market, as much as I wish I did. So yeah, I love this one, but Stagg Jr. is just a whole other world, whole other level. Now here's where it's going to get really interesting. Is Elijah Craig barrel proof? You can get on the shelf pretty much anywhere. You can grab this sucker for $70. Maybe not this particular batch, but a batch of Elijah Craig over the course of a year, you should be able to pick up a couple. Now, granted, in my area, it's very prevalent. It's not as prevalent in a lot of areas, but it's certainly way more prevalent. The batches on this are way bigger than the batches on Stagg Jr. Or over the course of the year, the amount of Elijah Craig that gets released is way more than Stagg Jr. There's 3 batches of this, 2 of this, and the batches are probably bigger on this one, given its prevalence on the shelf. So, I know I can get this for $70 at the most, pretty much when I want it, at least for now. Knock on wood. This one is basically a unicorn. Almost never can get it. Or you can get it on the secondary market for, like I said, $150. So, is all the hype around this one worth it? How do these two stack up? Well, we're about to find out. And I've gone with Elijah Craig batch C920 because it's one of the higher lauded, more appreciated batches of Elijah Craig. Personally, I've only had one batch of Elijah Craig that I was like meh on because it was so hot. But when I added a little water, it was great. So most batches of Elijah Craig I'm digging on, but this one is kind of something special. So this is quite good. Batch 14, really good reviews on this one. Really good reviews on this one. Which is better? I hate picking favorites. I'll say that out of the gate. So as we try and pick a favorite here, it's going to be a little bit tough. It would probably be best to do this blind, but given I know the profiles of both these products pretty well, I think I'd be able to pick them out anyway. So, okay, granted, I just opened this bottle of Stagg, so when I'm pouring, hasn't had much oxygen time. I opened this Elijah Craig just a little bit a few months ago. It was early December when I popped it, so it's had a little bit more exposure to air. Would that make that big a difference? I don't think so personally, but some people would swear that it would. So, just so you're aware what I'm smelling. I get more alcohol on the Stagg. The Elijah Craig, sweet oak, a lot of it. A lot of it. Proof points on these are pretty similar. This batch of Elijah Craig, 132.8, so 66.4% alcohol by volume, whereas the Stagg again was 65.1% alcohol by volume, 130.2 proof. So we're talking about like 2 proof point difference. That's it. This one is a little bit fruitier, so I'm getting more fruit out of the Stagg. Maraschino cherries, I get that. That's prevalent here. This has a slight roasted nuttiness to it that I never get in Buffalo Trace products, or have not gotten. I may get it in the future. So if you're digging something a little more roasty, nutty on the nose here, this one a little fruitier, still sweet, but a little more alcohol, a little more harsh on the nose on the Stagg. I'm not going to give a winner based on nose. I'm going to taste them, because that's what matters. I mean, as much as it's nice to sit here and snort this, these are both quite lovely sniffers. All right, I'm going to go back to the Stagg because that's what I've been drinking already. I mean, really nice. The oak presence in this one and the cherry makes it more reminiscent to me of an Eagle Rare than a Buffalo Trace. Of course, Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace have some good similarities together, but Eagle Rare shows more characteristics of age. Stagg Jr., at least this batch, does as well. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this was coming from, like high-end warehouses where there's the propensity to build really high alcohol by volume barrels and some quick aging due to just like hotter temperatures. Hot air rises. All right, let's go to this Elijah Craig, which smells so good. So, more oak present for sure. The heat is hitting me about the same. When I was sipping that Stagg Jr., I'm like, man, that is hot. So is the Elijah Craig. Both pack a wallop. The Elijah Craig brings more age. This is 12-year age stated, so that's, probably likely that it's going to do that. A little more barrel char, a little bit more dry on the finish. Plenty of toasted marshmallow and brown sugar. Some roasted peanut. I mean, Heaven Hill nuttiness. It's around. It's not Jim Beam level, but it's there. It's there for sure. This one isn't packing as many layers. I pulled out like 3. I got fruitiness. I got some suggestions of floral on the nose. I got several different kinds of sweetness that I could pull out of the Stagg Jr. I'm not pulling as much out of the Elijah Craig right now, as much as I want to, because I'm such an Elijah Craig fanboy. We're battling the favorites here, the heavy hitters, Drew's go-tos. Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one bourbon for the rest of my life, it'd be one of these. Going back to it, okay, a little more like smooth, rich sweetness. Sometimes in Elijah Craig, I'll get a buttercream frosting, which I've gotten out of this bottle before. I wasn't getting it as much tonight. That last sip coming through a little bit better for me. I have not been drinking tonight, so hitting these heavy hitters right now. My palate's just still getting a little bit adjusted. I'm going to go to the Elijah Craig one more time. Then I'm going to go back to the Stagg Jr. We're going to have to pick a winner, at least for tonight. Barrel char, frosting, marshmallow, peanuts, and a dry finish. Back to the Stagg. I'm not going to recount the notes I already shouted out to you, but they're holding up. And getting the air and getting my palate more adjusted to it is just making it better. I have to give it to Stagg today, which pains me a little bit because Buffalo Trace and Stagg Jr., Buffalo Trace products and Stagg Jr. are already hyped enough. You should buy Elijah Craig if you're not already. Given its availability and its 12-year age statement and its value, you should buy Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. That said, out of these two bottles, for me tonight, the one I'm enjoying just a smidge better is the Stagg Jr. I think just brings a little bit more complexity. And by complexity, I mean I'm getting age, I'm getting well-developed sweetness, but I'm also getting this fruit that I'm really, really liking. And the finish on this isn't quite as drying as the Elijah Craig, and I like that. I like that it leaves a little bit more stuff in my mouth. Again, it's not an eternal finish. I was actually a little disappointed in this before I'd gone to the Elijah Craig, but comparing the two, I'd take the finish over the Stagg. The finish on the Stagg over the finish on the Elijah Craig tonight. But who knows? If I tasted them tomorrow, it might be different. All right. That's it. That's the deal with Stagg Jr. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I mean, I enjoyed it, obviously. Getting to sit here and sip these whiskeys, pretty rad. Again, if you want more content, you should subscribe to the channel or check out the Entry Proof Podcast. You can also go over to Instagram and follow me at Drew P. Whiskey. You can follow Entry Proof Podcast over there too, at Entry Proof Podcast. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and remember to keep it neat.